board-certified podiatrist in private practice in New York City. He's the founder and director of the Chelsea Foot and Ankle Center, where he treats the entire spectrum of foot and ankle medicine and surgery. He is a fellow of the American College of Foot and Ankle Orthopedics and Medicine. Dr. Cement and his husband Michael co-founded the blog Vegan Mo's, winner of 2016 Veg News Bloggy Award. And yay! And were named one of the Veg News 2015 top vegan male bloggers. At veganmos.com, they share their original recipes and for delicious homemade vegan food, as well as writing reviews on cookbooks and products. I'm sorry? Oh, actually, let me give you the whole name of the. It is veganmos.com. At veganmos.com, they share their original recipes for delicious homemade vegan food, as well as writing reviews on cookbooks and products, travel tips, and thought pieces about their intersectionality of veganism and animal rights with human and LGBTQ rights. Their first cookbook, NYC Vegan, Iconic Recipes for a Taste of the Big Apple, is due to be released in May of 2017.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Cement proudly serves on the board of directors of Woodstock Farm Sanctuary, an organization that is near and dear to his heart as he went and remains vegan for the animals. A former resident of Maplewood, New Jersey, Dr. Cement now lives in Brooklyn with his husband and their neurotic but lovable vegan dogs, Riley and Charlie. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Cement.
Hi, everybody. So I'm charged with the unfun part of this presentation. I have to talk about the present of food and the effects that food is having on our health. So my disclaimers: I have no conflicts of interest. I don't have any relationships with pharmaceutical companies, government agencies, and as you heard, the only real sort of conflict bias I have is that I run a blog that promotes veganism. So, what is the state of food in America today? It's pretty terrifying, actually, and to me, somewhat depressing. If you grew up in the 1970s, like I did, or 80s, as I also did, borderline kid, you saw a pyramid, a food pyramid that looked a lot like this, where the government, through the USDA, was actually recommending that we were having 2 to 3 servings of milk yogurt and cheese. There was an actual recommendation for meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and sort of reduce your oils at the top. But the most predominant amount of food recommended was, and still is, that we should be getting lots of grains, lots of vegetables, lots of fruit. This has evolved over the past couple of decades, and thankfully, with the work of a lot of different advocacy groups, one which I'm affiliated with, which is PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, they've been able to shift this, and we've been able to at least put dairy off the plate. Dairy now, thankfully, they actually acknowledge that we don't have to have anything from a cow. You actually just get your protein in a group there, which is now, we're no longer talking about meat. That's really legumes and beans, but please understand that there is protein in fruits, vegetables, and grains. All right, so we know what we're supposed to be eating, right? We're supposed to be eating lots of fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, seeds. And are we doing it? Sadly, only 1 in 3 adult Americans has 2 servings of fruit a day. That's the minimum recommendation of 2 servings of fruit a day. I have 2 before I go to the gym in the morning. 1 in 4 US adults are only hitting their minimum, again, requirement recommendation of 3 servings of vegetables per day. And these groups don't overlap. So the people who are hitting their 2 servings of fruit, 3 servings of vegetables, they don't overlap. Because the group of people who actually do both get the minimum requirement of fruits and vegetables is only 14% of Americans. It's worse though if you're a high school student. high school students, getting about 32% of them are getting their 2 servings of fruit a day, 13% are getting 3 servings of vegetables a day, and less than 10% are getting both requirements. So if we're not eating our fruits and vegetables, what are we eating? Maybe it's more appropriately, who are we eating? 13 billion hamburgers a year. The average American eats 50 hot dogs a year. We consume 3 billion pizzas a year. 2 million tons of French fries, that's 30 pounds per year per American. And 1 glass, which is an 8-ounce glass of a soda or a sugar soft drink. Now, these are averages. And I can tell you, for example, if you're like me, some of you probably are, I don't drink soda anymore. I gave it up about 7, 8 years ago. So someone else is drinking my glass of soda a day. And I haven't had a hamburger since May 30th of 2009. And so who's been having my hamburgers? Who's been eating my hot dogs? So if there's a 0 in the average like me, there are people out there who are well in excess of 100, 150 hamburgers, hot dogs per year. And we're eating lots of processed food, lots of sugary foods, lots of candy, lots of treats. You can't really escape the checkout aisle at any American grocery store or even pharmacy nowadays. That's the irony in a pharmacy, where you sort of get baited with this impulse purchase. And the reason is that the food was actually engineered for us to crave it. They know that we crave salty, we crave sweet and fatty foods, or any combination of them. And they're getting better at making really, really tasty combinations of all 3 of these. And that has an impact. So what is the impact in terms of human health? Well, in terms of human health here in the US, these are the top 7 killers in the US. And the ones in yellow are the ones that are affiliated or associated with diet or dietary changes. Number 1 is heart disease. 1 in 4 Americans is going to die of heart disease this year. That number is disproportionately larger for men than it is for women. Cancer, and that is all subtypes of cancer combined, that is the number 2 killer in America. Some of them are diet related, some of them are not. We're leaving out chronic lower respiratory diseases, COPD, and accidents because they're really not related to diet. That's why I've sort of phased them out here. Smoking is the number 1 killer associated with COPD. But stroke, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, they are rounding out the bottom 7. And they all have something in common, the ones in yellow. They have something in common with them. Some more so with, let's say, diabetes, maybe cancer and heart disease, others less so. But there is one sort of underarching theme, and that is the epidemic of obesity in America. 2 out of 3 Americans are overweight today. 1 out of 3 are obese. 1 out of 20, it's over actually, 1 out of 20, are morbidly obese. And men are 3 out of 4 of us are overweight or obese. These numbers are going at a rapid rate towards moving towards a higher percentage, and it's costing us a lot. It's costing us a lot in terms of health, but it's also costing us a lot economically. And since in our country economics sort of dictate a lot of what we sort of focus our attention on, we should take a look and see what it's costing us. Obesity, back in 2008, because this is the last year data that the federal government actually studied this, obesity in medical care costs alone were $147 billion per year in the United States. Those numbers are obviously gone up since that time. The productive cost, meaning productivity cost, so you're obese and you have a health issue and you don't go to work that day. That's a productivity cost. It's estimated as being anywhere between $3.4 and $6.4 billion. And interestingly, the US military has, there's a cost to our military as well. regardless of what you think about the military, for people who want to be eligible to serve, you have to have a certain BMI, certain body mass index. And currently, 5.7 million men in America who are eligible by age to serve in the armed forces cannot serve in the armed forces because of their obesity, and that number is 16.5 million women. The impact economically of heart disease and stroke, because they are linked together, the 2011 year data shows that it cost us $316.6 billion in direct healthcare costs and lost productivity. Diabetes is catching up at $245 billion, $176 billion in the direct medical care costs, $69 billion in decreased productivity. Cancer, 2011 data shows that it was $88.7 billion. The projection for 4 years out from now is that it's going to cost us $157 billion. That number is a little bit skewed because as we have developed greater capacity to treat cancer with different treatments, those treatments are expensive, and that is part of why the cost is going up, because we are becoming more effective at treating cancer. Alzheimer's disease on the rise, and it is $236 billion in direct care and productivity costs. The projection, which is terrifying for the year 2050, if we don't change course on this, is $1 trillion a year in America. And so when you aggregate all of these number 1 through number 7 killers, and you take a look at the ones that are dietarily related, it's costing us nearly $900 billion a year. So if you want to also add in the obesity factor, which I realize this is sort of, if you think about it in terms of a Venn diagram, there's not necessarily a complete overlap, but there is some overlap. But if you add in the $147 billion for obesity, we are in excess of $1 trillion a year just to pay for the effects of these diseases, many of which are diet-related. But there's another side to the human cost, and that has to do with hunger. 1 out of 8 Americans faces hunger or food insecurity today, meaning they don't know where their next meal is coming from. Globally, that number is 1 in 9, and that amounts to over 795 million people on this planet who don't know where their next meal is coming from or who are starving. 3.1 million children are dying because of a lack of access to food and because they have poor nutrition. And incidentally, it would only cost us $3.2 billion per year to feed all 66 million hungry school-age children. So when you compare that to, let's say, $245 million in obesity, $245 billion in obesity, think about what that would cost. It's a fraction. So how would we do that if we wanted to? Well, you gotta look at where the actual food is going. 2011 data shows that over 883 million tons of corn were grown, and 260 million tons of soybeans were grown. But of the corn, 40 to 50%, and of the soybean, 80%, went directly to feed animals who were then later slaughtered to be consumed by humans. So if we were to cut out the middleman, as it were, and stop feeding the animals but feed the starving humans, if all of those food crops went to humans, we would have 70% more food in the supply chain. And that would be enough to feed 4 billion extra people. There's a lot more to say about this. Specifically, I would always want to talk about the animals, the 63 billion who we are slaughtering every year. I'm going to let Rachel talk about that, because Rachel's better equipped to talk about that than I am. But what would happen if we changed course? What would happen if we decided to go vegan, adopt a plant-based diet? There's an interesting study that was put out in the Atlantic. These are the projections on how much money we could actually save if everybody followed, top line right there on the left, if you see, if everyone just followed the dietary recommendations. That's still eating animals, by the way. But if we just, I don't know, started following the dietary recommendations, by the year 2050, we'd be saving $197 billion a year. If everyone went vegetarian, that number jumps up to almost 260 billion. And if everyone went vegan, I hope, we'd be pushing 290 billion a year. So there's a lot to talk about. If we go vegan, it's not just the economic savings, which it's a huge factor. It's not just human health. There's also environmental factors, which I'm not going to touch on here. But and of course, there's the compassion and ethical issues associated with using animals for food. But anyone who studies these numbers and anybody who understands the data, if any of you were listening to Dr. Furman before, the data is pretty incontrovertible now, that adopting a whole foods plant-based diet and really moving in the direction of a vegan diet, that is really, in my opinion, the future of food. Thanks.
We'll save all the questions for the end. We want you to hear from everybody first. So the next speaker is Rachel Dreskin. She is the U.S. Head of Food Business for Compassion in World Farming. The U.S. Head of Food Business for Compassion in World Farming, otherwise known as CIWF, the leading global farm animal welfare organization. Her work focuses on collaborative partnerships with leading U.S. food companies to meaningfully advance farm animal welfare through their sustainability programs. Prior to joining CIWF in 2013, Rachel was the general manager for a renowned farm-to-table Manhattan restaurant and also worked with the division of News Corporation, where she consulted food companies on consumer sales promotions and marketing solutions. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Dreskin.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you. All right. How's everyone doing today? Great. Well, I need to start off by saying this is such a privilege and such an honor to be here speaking in front of all of you today. As Marissa has just said, I spend a lot of my time talking to food companies. So to have the opportunity to talk to passionate animal advocates who are vegan, vegetarian, or veg curious is just such a pleasure for me. So thank you for having me here today. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about the business of animal welfare, the kind of work that I do and how you can get involved in this kind of work to maximize the positive impact that you have. So we are at as Dr. Cement just touched on, we're facing a food crisis right now. There's no doubt about that. We are factory farming more animals than ever. We have a lot of issues that would need to be addressed immediately. However, we are also at a very pivotal time in history as well, a very exciting time. Consumers, government bodies, and food companies are starting to become tuned into this issue and starting to adopt different practices, put policies into place that are going to shape the future of our food system. So before I talk about that really exciting stuff, I am going to touch a bit on what is happening right now and why it's absolutely essential that we continue towards making this progress. Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is not a very pleasant picture to look at, but this is the outside of a factory farm. That is a giant manure lagoon. So what has happened with factory farming? One of the things is we see that now we're housing so many animals in confined spaces like this. We end up with these kind of scenes. This is not an unusual scene, unfortunately. So there is no question the impact that this has on our environment, the impact this has on the soil, the water, the climate in general. This is something that we absolutely must address. A UN report from 2006, so it's a little bit outdated, this number is probably a bit higher right now, which is very scary, is that livestock farming accounts for almost 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That number is more than the global transport sector combined. That is immense. As Dr. Cement also touched on, factory farming contributes in large parts of food insecurity. It takes about 100 calories of input, of grain input, to produce just 17 calories of meat or dairy. That means that 83% of the calories that we're using to feed farm animals are being wasted. We have, as Dr. Cement said, we have enough food right now on the planet to feed the entire world population, although we have so many people who are going to bed hungry every night. And we actually have enough food right now on the planet to feed the population, the anticipated population in 2050 of 9 billion people. And this is where I focus in, is the impact that this kind of system has on animals. So factory farming contributes to animal cruelty on an absolutely immense scale. So most of the animals that are in our food system are housed in conditions like this. They're in extremely tight quarters. A lot of them are kept in cages or crates for the vast majority of their lives. They don't have access to fresh air, let alone fresh air, but usually natural light. They also don't have the ability to express natural behaviors. Pigs that you see in this picture here are instinctually driven to do things like root around and build nests. Chickens are instinctually driven to perch and dust bathe. And in these systems that we're keeping the animals in, they don't have the ability to do any of this. It's a very, very poor system for so many reasons. However, there is a better way, and we are shifting toward that better way. And a lot of that is due to the kind of work that people in this room are doing. So there's a philosophy, the less and better philosophy. And by adopting the less and better philosophy, we truly have the power to make a major impact. And that is two-pronged. One is advocating for the reduced reliance on animal proteins, which I know a lot of people in this room are already doing by adopting a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. It's also about looking at the animals that are still stuck in our food supply system. So we have over 60 billion animals that are in our food supply system right now, and we need to figure out a way to be able to reduce the suffering for those animals while also highlighting a better way of reducing reliance on them altogether. So how can we maximize our impact? One, the most straightforward way is through our personal eating choices and not eating meat and dairy by leaving that off of our plates. There are other ways, though, that we can maximize our impact. That is, one of those ways is through supporting legislative reform. Another is through supporting corporate policy change, which is where my work centers in. So on the legislative front, there is a lot of really exciting stuff going on that we can all support. One of those things is there's a ballot initiative on the table in Massachusetts right now, which will be voted on in November, to ban the sale, not just ban this practice, but ban the sale of any meat or animal products coming from animals that were kept in intense confinement, such as cages or crates. So even if you don't live in Massachusetts, there are a lot of ways that you can get involved in this campaign and making sure that this ballot initiative gets pushed through. So I have this website on here, but the Humane Society of the United States is heading up a very noble effort on this front, where you can do things like go up there and volunteer and go door knocking, or by phone banking and calling people and encouraging them to make sure this important initiative gets pushed through. Now on to the corporate front. So that's what the majority of my work centers on. Since we do have these tens of billions of animals that are still in our supply chain, we need to look at ways to make sure that their suffering is reduced, measurably reduced. In addition to advocating for more meatless options and for restaurants and retailers to reduce their reliance on animal proteins. So when I go in and I work with food companies, a lot of times I'm working on, one, adding more plant-based options onto their shelves and menus. Another thing is to eliminate the worst practices in animal agriculture. So when I go in, I might be starting to talk with a food company about, let's eliminate the use of battery cages throughout your supply chain. Let's eliminate the use of gestation crates throughout your supply chain. And I am only successful in doing that work when these companies hear from consumers that they demand a better way, that you are not satisfied with the way these companies are doing business right now. And your voice is absolutely essential to that. So if I can leave you with one big thing today, it is to use the power of your voice to maximize your impact. Call your grocery stores. If you see a meatless option that's not on the shelf, you don't see a meatless option on the shelf, call them. Call the corporate headquarters and say, I want to see this product. I want healthy plant-based options on the shelves. Call McDonald's or Panera Bread. Call McDonald's and say, we demand a veggie burger to be on the menu. Call Panera and say, we want more meatless options. Also ask questions about their supply chain. How are the animals that are still in your supply chain being treated? Ask for specifics. I can't tell you how much of a difference that makes, because when I go in the room and I start negotiating with these food companies, they will not do anything. They will not make any changes unless they hear from consumers. And when the voices of consumers come together, the effect of that is absolutely tremendous. And if we're going to talk about maximizing impact, when a company puts a policy change into place, that will impact millions, potentially billions of animals. So there's such an opportunity here to extend beyond your personal eating habits, which have a tremendous impact as well, but in order to support legislative and policy change as well. So, in conclusion, thank you all for having me today. It's such an honor to be here, and I want to leave you that we together have the power to be major contributors in shaping what the future of our food system looks like.
Okay, as before, we'll save the questions to the end. And again, it is my honor to introduce the last but most certainly not least, Liz D, who is changing the conversation about food production and sustainability business through her dynamic experimental base as a food company executive, ethical vegan, and impact investor. As a co-owner and executive vice president of Smarties Candy Company, so for everybody that got the bags today and you have the Smarties in here, or in there you have Liz D to thank, and CEO of Balen and Bjorn Capital LLC, Dee provides unique insights into the future of food, impact investing, and a shifting trajectory towards smart, sustainable, and humane business models. Dee has been featured in the New York Times, CNN Money, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, and among other publications. She shares updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so be sure to follow her, and join me in welcoming Liz D.
Here. Let's give it up one more time to Rachel and Dr. Cement. It's not always easy to be speaking in front of a group, although you guys are so nice. And when I look out, I see a lot of friendly faces and some really great statement t-shirts, by the way. I see your t-shirt and I like it. I wish I were wearing a statement t-shirt right now. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Folks in the back, oh yeah. All right, thank you. I'm gonna try to project my voice. All right, I set this up on a PC and I'm now on a Mac. So if it doesn't format properly, please blame the technological gods. Thank you so much, New Jersey Veg Fest, for having me here. And again, to my co-panelists, I'm really looking forward to a lively Q&A. We tried to keep our speeches brief so that we have plenty of time for that, and it looks like we're right on schedule. The future of food. It's one of my favorite topics, you guys. We're in the midst of a plant-based revolution. This is not a trend. If we're seeing a trend, it's the mark of an ongoing and sustained movement towards conversion from from animal-based to plant-based proteins and other foods. So just a couple weeks ago, a group of investors who manage assets at over $1.2 trillion launched a campaign to encourage 16 global food companies to change the way they source protein for their products to help reduce environmental and health risks, of which there are many. They urged these food companies to shift from meat to plant-based protein options. $1.25 trillion may cause decision makers to take notice. We, all of us here, are part of a widespread effort to alleviate human and non-human animal suffering by shaping the future of food. As Alexander Hamilton said of the American Revolution, at least in the Broadway musical, this is not a moment, it's the movement. And I would add, this is the movement toward plant-based foods. So we know how the American Revolution turned out, I'm just saying. Plant-based revolution is happening. I know the future may feel a little bit bleak after these presentations, but I think that the crowd in this room and the energy can attest to how bright the future really is. And as I describe the economic landscape shaping the future of food, please keep in mind how you as individuals can do your part to help shift towards a more humane and sustainable food supply. The most obvious, of course, being how you use your dollars. Every dollar that you spend is a vote. Every time that you choose to eat something 3 times a day, or in my case, 5 or 6, I love my snacking, it makes a difference, all right? And so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks, make a choice, choose plant-based. All right, so my background is in business and manufacturing. I work at Smarties Candy Company, and my grandfather founded the company in 1949, and I'm a co-owner and co-executive vice president there. We make a variety of candies, but we're most well known for our Smarties candy rolls, and we make and sell over 2 billion of them per year. Now, I went vegan because of Smarties. If you think calling up a candy company or any other company and asking them questions about vegan and vegetarian doesn't make a difference, I am proof that you are wrong. Because the reason that I went vegan is because we got enough questions about our candy, and by the way, it is vegan. We got enough questions about our candy that I had to sit up, take notice, and say, what does that mean? I think I know what being vegan is, but I don't really know why. And I did a little digging, and I was horrified, and I changed my lifestyle from then on out. So from there, I tried to figure out how I could make the biggest impact on behalf of human and non-human animals. I really wanted to alleviate the suffering that I saw. So when I saw how I could leverage my business experience, investing and advising in the for-profit space, it opened up a whole new way for me to change the world for animals. So my husband, Nick Guerin, and I co-founded the Lynden Capital just this past January, and it's a mission-driven investment company. We invest in companies creating solutions to outdated animal products, and between all of you in this room and me, I believe all traditional animal products are outdated. It's just a matter of time. We're looking for smart people, for disruptors with vision who are focused on the big picture. We invest for sustainability. So animal products are resource intensive, devastating to the environment, and very wasteful, a topic in which many people in this room are very well versed, and we've heard a bit about already. And we invest in humane solutions. I was raised with the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. My parents are actually in this room in the front row. Hi, Mom and Dad, I love you guys. Thanks for being here. So the golden rule, I would never want to be treated the way our animal agriculture industries treat animals today. I believe it's inhumane and unethical to raise and slaughter animals for food needlessly. So we seek companies whose success will mean that fewer animals will be harmed. Here's our portfolio. We've invested in Lighter, the new Pandora of food that connects people with grocery lists and recipes based on recommendations by food leaders. In Memphis Meats, a clean meat producer growing or culturing slaughter-free, antibiotic-free, and pathogen-free meat in a laboratory that's meat without harming animals. You heard that right. I'll get back to that later. We invested in Nut Pods, a dairy-free creamer company creating rich, unsweetened half-and-half like milk based in almonds and coconuts. The Purple Carrot, a plant-based meal kit delivery service and vote a vegan fashion label. So what does a vegan fashion label have to do with the future of food? Well, the mission of the Lynden capital extends beyond food to alleviate animal suffering, including for animals used in fashion. We're investing in the future that we want to see. And we're not the only people investing in plant-based and culture space, and that's what I'm here to talk with you about today. I want to really give you some seeds of hope because we're not the only ones with this idea. This is a growing category affecting many billions of investor dollars annually. And you better believe that the meat industry, they noticed. This is the cover of Meeting Place magazine from this past March. As you can see on the bottom, it says non-meat grata, plant-based meat substitutes are evolving, luring investors. So Meeting Place magazine, I'm sure you guys get this one, you read it all the time, right? It's a meat industry magazine, Meeting Place, very punny. I wish I could read the whole article to you because quite frankly, it fills me with hope to witness their growing alarm. But I will keep it brief for the interest of time. So just quoting one snippet from their story. Plant protein is in. Forget the war between vegetarians and meat eaters. Today's battle is for the omnivores plate, and increasingly, those who eat meat are looking to diversify their protein sources. Well, I never thought I would say this about anything from Meeting Place magazine, but I agree. Savvy business people in this space are focused on going mainstream. They're not limiting themselves to the small percentage of vegans and vegetarians in the world, but to all consumers, especially omnivores. That has to be there for the company to succeed. Also, this concept of diversifying protein sources is really key. We see it in consumer behavior as well as within the food industry conglomerates, which I'll touch on later. So the article in Meeting Place is actually followed by an interview with the founder of Garden, Yves Potvin, he's French. They make my favorite crispy chicken tenders, obviously chicken-free, which brings me to this food category that's totally reshaping the future of food, plant-based analogs. So you're familiar with this. These are our veggie burgers, our veggie dogs, any of those veggie meats that you see on supermarket shelves. So Garden has seen so much success, people can barely tell the difference, if at all, between their products and traditional animal products. And if an analog can nail taste, price, and convenience, then those factors hugely influence consumer behavior. They have the capacity for massive disruption in the market. And of course, as consumption of these plant-based analogs increase, consumption of the animal products decrease, and that's what we want to see. So ideally, these plant-based analogs can be switched out one-for-one with traditional animal products. It should be convenient, it should be clear, it should be a straightforward swap this for that food product. You don't need to get a PhD to figure out how to cook this stuff. You need to just do it the same way you always did it. It needs to be easy. Now, meat alone is worth about $1 trillion per year globally. According to Radiant Insights, a research firm, the global meat substitute market, the plant-based meat market, was worth $3.34 billion in 2014, but it's expected to grow 7.5% per year, reaching $5.8 billion by 2022. All right, a lot of numbers. What does it mean? That's over $2 billion of growth in less than a decade in this plant-based protein arena. That's $2 billion of opportunity for investors. That's $2 billion for the animals, and that's $2 billion that will fundamentally shift the future of food. Let's talk about cultured animal products. How many of us have heard about cultured animal products so I get a sense of where we're at? All right, awesome, super evolved people, you know what's up. Okay, so these are not for sale yet on the market. Cultured animal products are an innovative category that is going to change the game for animals if they can achieve that trifecta, that taste, price, and convenience. They're going to be on the market in a few short years, so get ready. What we're seeing here is a meatball made by Memphis Meats, and here's a quote by Uma Valetti, the CEO. It takes 12 to 20 months to raise a beef cattle before it's slaughtered to make a meatball. We made ours in 2 to 3 weeks. So what is clean meat? Obviously, it gets grown a bit faster than meat on an animal. Well, it is meat from an animal, but it's grown in a laboratory. They start with cells taken from a harmless biopsy from a living animal. They're put into a cultured media fed what are essentially sugars, where they start to proliferate and grow in what are called bioreactors. This is very similar to the beer brewing process. How many of us here know how to brew beer? Come on, beer aficionados. All right, we got a few. So it's very, very similar to that. This isn't really new technology. Technology is just being applied in a new way. So right now, that meatball will set you back about $18,000 per pound. But that is going to be coming down significantly. We just need to scale up production. And we're gonna see this, like I said, in the market in just a few years. Now, let's step back and consider the investment space for these products that have the capability of ending animal suffering as we know it. Let's talk about the food industry giants entering the space. You guys have heard of General Mills, they're known for their cereals. Well, they started a venture capital arm. If you can't create growth, you buy it. Well, that's what they're doing. They're investing in companies and they're focusing in and being bullish on plant-based proteins. Bullish meaning that they believe that the value of these products are gonna be going up, so they want to buy equity now. For instance, they're part of an $18 million investment into Lyrical Foods, makers of Kite Hill dairy-free cheese and yogurt products. They happen to be some of my favorite. I know, let's hear it for Kite Hill. They're delicious. But let's think about what General Mills has in their portfolio. They have Haagen-Dazs in their portfolio. Now think about this. They're focused now on plant-based dairy. They obviously know which way the wind is blowing, and they're getting their equity in now. It's nice to see. Let's look at Pinnacle Foods. Also a publicly traded food conglomerate that contains a lot of non-veg brands like Hungry Man and fish fillet companies. This is their portfolio. I know it's a little bit of a mess. That's why I put those yellow arrows in for you, pointing to the vegan companies that they have in their portfolio. So the CEO of Pinnacle Foods said that he believes, quote, plant-based protein is at the tipping point of becoming mainstream. These people have been food industry giants for decades, maybe even a century, and that is what they are predicting. So don't take it from me, take it from this guy who does not give a lick about animals. Sorry about Cancor, maybe you're a nice guy, but I just got a feeling you don't care. But most recently, you know, they acquired Gardein for $154.6 million in 2014, and then they recently acquired Earth Balance in 2016. So these deals are happening, and they're happening now. Let's look at this for a second. WhiteWave. WhiteWave, i.e. known for their dairy products, get it, WhiteWave? They acquired So Delicious in 2014 for $195 million. And then in 2015, they acquired Vega, both plant-based brands. I'm sure you guys are familiar with them. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. So 2016 rolls around, and I'm like, what's WhiteWave gonna do this year? What are they gonna do to top that? Well, nothing. Dannon's gonna acquire them. Boom. One of the most well-known dairy makers, the largest French yogurt producer, Dannon, huge publicly traded company, is setting out to acquire WhiteWave Foods for $12.5 billion by the end of the year. We'll see how that shakes out, but it's pretty impressive, and it goes to show that, you know, like I said, if you can't create growth, you buy the growth, and it's clear that that's what Dannon's doing. So in addition to large food companies, we're seeing high net worth individuals, venture capital firms, i.e. VC firms, I'm sure you've heard that term, VC firms, and banks, right? Investing in the space. What are we looking at here? We're looking at the Impossible Burger. Who here has tried the Impossible Burger? Yeah. All right, the rest of you, go to Chelsea. What time is it? You can still catch it tonight, 5 o'clock. The Impossible Burger is made by Impossible Foods. It is a plant-based burger that leads. It tastes a heck of a lot like meat, which is why David Chang, who's not known for being animal-friendly whatsoever in his Mama Fuko line of restaurants, added it to his menu. They spent over 5 years and over $180 million developing this burger, and you can get it for 13 bucks. I highly recommend checking it out. And it's kind of hard to see here, but I included this Instagram post by Chef Chang because he wrote, "Today I tasted the future of food and it was vegan." Pretty amazing for a guy who really isn't that into animal products. So, who really is into animal products. So backing up a bit, there is opportunity here for money to be made. Investors, including myself, are honing in on the plant-based and cultured spaces. Successful products are getting or on their way to that trifecta of price, taste, and convenience. But another nail in the coffin for traditional animal products is just how darn risky they are. Now, I don't know about you, but when I ate meat, dairy, and eggs, and I was like, you know, handling raw eggs and raw meat, I was Cloroxing the crap out of my kitchen. But that stuff's nasty. I mean, you can get E. coli, salmonella, and animals at the farm spread disease, not to mention the antibiotic-resistant pathogens that I'm sure Dr. Smith could speak more about too than I could. But also the disease within the farm can disrupt the supply chain, which is very risky for people who rely on a constant and steady supply. So for instance, the avian flu outbreak last year it cost our economy billions of dollars. It also disrupted the supply chain for many people who relied on eggs for the products that they make. So companies like General Mills actually relied on plant-based analogs to fill in the supply chain gaps during that avian food outbreak, which is pretty remarkable. But, you know, I hate to think about that because, of course, so many animals were killed because of the avian flu. It was really terrible. It was tragic. But when I think about how risky animal products are, I again turn back to how hopeful I feel. When plant-based foods compete with animal-based foods, they can win. With products like these, it's apparent that the future of food is upon us. We are in the midst of a plant-based evolution and revolution. As these products become ubiquitous, billions of human and non-human animals' lives can be spared. Now, none of us came here by horse and buggy, at least I certainly hope not, and none of us sent our last message via courier pigeon. So, we are evolving to rely on animals less and less by improving our systems, improving our products, and improving our food supply. The story of the future of food has a happy ending. It has to. And I'm a part of it, and you're a part of it, and Bill Gates is a part of it, and together we are on our way towards a more humane and sustainable future of food. All right, thank you guys so much for your Please stay in touch. You can learn more about Millennium Beer Capital on our website, and you can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's the Liz D, T-H-E, Liz D-E-E, for all of those. So thank you again.
So at this time, we will turn it to you guys. And Dr. Ethan Cement and Rachel Dreskin and Liz D will take your questions.
Bring it on.
Anybody? Go ahead, right here. Actually, do you mind standing up because we don't have a microphone for us?
So what I heard, especially from the second speaker, was
Rachel?
making vegetarian and vegan equal. Like, thank you, you're vegetarian and vegan, we both understand, but vegetarians aren't doing anything to help animals because that's part of the same process of the meat industry. So I wanted to see if you had a comment about
Is this question for Rachel?
And anybody who, well, Rachel, but if anybody wants to put their input.
Hi, thank you. So just to make sure I understand your question, so is the question, do I consider vegetarians and vegans equal? Or?
Well, I mean, I just was making the comment that I heard you saying that, that vegetarians and vegans in the audience understand what you're doing for the animals, but vegetarians aren't. So, in my opinion, well, they're not.
Okay. Yes. So I think that, a lot of people are on a path. They're eating choices. It's kind of an evolution. And I think that, for me personally, where would I like people to end up? How do I eat? How does my husband and my 2-year-old son, who's running around here somewhere, eat? I personally advocate for a plant-based diet, for a vegan diet. I think that some people going from being omnivores to being vegan, they don't necessarily make the switch completely overnight. So I think some people do, which is amazing, and kudos to all people who have made that switch very, very quickly. And I think some people are on a different path. They may go on that path from omnivore to try to make some better choices, and then eating some vegetarian foods or plant-based foods, to then becoming vegetarian, and then ultimately, hopefully end up vegan. So I think that there's a spectrum there. And do I think that the impacts of eating vegetarian versus being an omnivore versus being a vegan are different? Absolutely, absolutely. But as you evolve on that spectrum, the suffering, the amount of suffering that your diet is contributing to drastically decreases as you head down that spectrum. Go ahead, in the back.
What would you recommend to somebody that aspires to be an activist in their community, kind of like, taking a baby step there, kind of moving on and possibly influence corporate structures like myself. So, pretty much, like, where's the first step? I look online, but
That's such a good question, and one that I asked myself a lot, and I continue to ask myself. When I started out, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to tell a little bit about myself to answer your question. Okay. Just a little bit, I promise, not too much. When I started out, I was trying to figure out what to do, and I was looking to things that played towards my strengths. So you actually, you're a very good public speaker. You obviously are not afraid to get up and, speak up for yourself, as you just demonstrated. So perhaps doing something that would involve you taking a more public stand would be a fit for you. I would recommend just thinking about what you're good at, and then determining what areas fit in with that in terms of animal advocacy. So if you're a good public speaker, or you're not afraid to speak with strangers or friends you haven't met yet, as they say, you could consider something like leafleting, or you could be taking meetings with local businesses, and just everywhere that you already are. I don't know if you're in, if you're working or you're in school, but wherever you are, you can work within the structure. So if you're in school, in college, or high school, you can work with your, the people, the powers that be, the people who are in your dining hall, dining services, companies. You can petition and then deliver those petitions. So really take a leadership role in that area. There really are limitless places where you could go with this. So I would recommend doing what you enjoy, because that's where you're not going to burn out.
I would just add to that, I agree with you completely, Liz. I would add that a lot of us get overwhelmed when we look at the data. The data is really overwhelming. And if you're a numbers guy like me, you look at this and you shake your head and you're like, what am I going to do? And for me, what I decided was that I was going to do whatever I could. I was sort of an environmentalist who was eating meat, like back in college, like a lot of environmentalists who aren't actually environmentalists. And one of the things that they used to say was, think globally, act locally. And so you have to work within your own community, whatever that community is. So I'm working within my own medical community, where doctors don't receive any nutrition education that's worth anything. We get 2 weeks in medical school if we're lucky, and they're telling us to eat lean meats like chicken. I mean, it's completely outdated. So I'm trying to work within that community. I try to work within the LGBTQ community, because that's also my community. Wherever you find yourself, that's a place where you can open your mouth and talk to people. And I think about what Colleen Patrick Boudreau said, which is, don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something, anything. And that's really just get up and remind yourself that every day. You can't do it all, you can do something.
I'll be very fast, because there are a lot of really great suggestions. But I also like to mention too, if you go to the website for my organization, Compassion Rural Farming, CIWF.com, or you go to the Humane Society of the United States, or the Humane League, and all of these different animal advocacy groups, sign up for their mailing lists. Definitely do that. Just Google all the animal groups you find, sign up for their mailing lists. I know that, from Compassion, we email our supporters all the time with real, tangible things that you can do to make a big difference. So just getting kind of like looped in, if you're not already, to that circuit, that network, you'll have a lot of things that you can get started on right away.
Great. All right. Oh, no. There was a question I pointed to somebody. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that we want to do for a club at our school is like write letters to companies, and I'm not sure, maybe you have this on your website. Where should we send the letters? I think we just, say we want to write to Panera Bread.
Yes.
We just send it to their headquarters. Where can we go to actually get bread?
Yes. Yeah, Wi-Fi. Okay. So yeah, if you go to any company's website, they will have an email address for you to send information to, and I promise you that they do absolutely read the emails that they come in, because then they ask me about the emails, or they say, oh my gosh, we're getting hundreds or thousands of emails about e-chickens, and I'm like, oh, tell me about that. What do people want? And that's what opens the door to negotiations and policy change. So yes, if you go to the website, they will have contact info, and they absolutely they log everything that comes in there.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Black?
This question may be for Liz. As public, how would we, when we go to our financial advisors, what kind of questions would we ask them? Because many of us probably are invested with General Mills. My thought is I do not want to do that. Anything that has favored other companies, animal-based companies. So what questions, and I've done this in the past, and the person has just basically said to me, oh, you are invested in those. So what would be the direct questions to ask them?
Such a good question, and it's something that I wish I had a better answer for you on, because right now there is not one vegan publicly traded food company, not one yet. So what you can do is you can avoid investing in those companies, but it might involve working with an investor manager that would then start racking up your fees and asking, you know, to get really cutting into your profits. So the short answer is, unfortunately, in the publicly traded space, unless you're picking yourself the companies and you stay within, say, tech, okay, they're not necessarily selling and profiting off chickens. There isn't a great option for you, particularly with index funds. But steering clear altogether of any food company is one way to do it.
I had spoken, I had called Hampton Creek, and I was told they're not public yet, so we can do nothing with that. So that's pretty much what everything, all of the private companies, or most companies are like, that aren't in cooperation.
Yes, exactly. So for those of us who maybe aren't that familiar with the way it works with companies going public, they really need to grow to a particular critical mass before they end up going public. And unfortunately, no vegan companies have gotten to that point yet, or they've joined the portfolio of other, enormous industry giants, as we've seen. So yes, something like Hampton Creek, keep your eyes peeled on the news. They're finishing up, I think, a $100 million raise, and then after that, they're set to potentially go public. So keep your eyes peeled. At that point, you can purchase their stock individually. Yeah, sounds like you really know what you're doing. So I trust in your
No
abilities
restaurants?
to do it.
No restaurants either?
No.
Not either? Okay.
I think we have time for one more. Go ahead, in the back.
There are like two trains of thought where, say, a vegan company is bought out by a bigger conglomerate that most of their products are non-vegan. Some people say, stay away from them, don't buy that product anymore. And then other people say, no, buy it because you need to let that conglomerate know that we want vegan options. So what do you think people should do? And I suppose with like cosmetic companies too, and not just food companies.
Is this one for me too? I'm guessing it is, but I didn't want to present it.
Anybody, but yeah, Liz or anybody else.
It's such a good question. I would say do what you feel most comfortable with. All of us have to make that decision for ourselves. Did everyone hear the question, by the way? Yes, I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Yes, okay. No? Should we be purchasing products from companies that are owned by larger parent companies that have in their portfolio animal abusive products and services and companies? So as I said, I think that you should do what you feel most comfortable with. I'm not going to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. It's their personal choice how they're going to consume products. I personally will consume products that are vegan, even if they're owned by a parent company that's not vegan. I think that it's a great message to send, that there's demand for that product and it will cause them to invest more in that space. The only way, or perhaps one of the ways, that these vegan companies can get to scale globally and be placed in every place where food is sold is when they're being owned by companies with billions, if not trillions of dollars to spend on marketing and distribution, on packaging and innovation, and on all the research and development that goes into making food products. And it's complicated and it's costly, but I think that unlike the case with the electric car, we're not seeing these companies purchasing, say, we're not seeing Dannon purchasing WhiteWave because they want to kill the products. We're seeing Dannon purchasing WhiteWave because they believe that the future is plant-based. And I think by sending that message, yes, indeed it is a great thing. But like I said, do what you feel most comfortable with, because each of us needs to sleep well at night and feel good about our purchases. So whether you're supporting the quote little guys or the larger guys owned by evil food conglomerates, what have you, as long as you're making vegan choices, you're making a humane choice. I think that's something that you can feel really good about.
Okay, another round of applause for Dr. Ethan.